Let's bring in Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. He's got the latest update. And Sam, as things certainly are trending among different states, the legality of it is a question, and it now seems that the companies are getting ahead of it as well. Tell us more.
Yeah, Craig, it's been sort of the latest kind of trend we've seen from regulators and states, state politicians, even federal politicians, and the NCAA itself now, not to mention them, talking about not being able to bet on college players, which has always been a concern, frankly. A lot of states have had these rules where you can't bet on players in your own colleges. These are college player props, which are pretty popular. They're more popular in professional sports because there's not these limits, but you've had, kind of this conversation come about in wake of the Jonte Porter stuff, who was the NBA player who was banned for essentially manipulating his own statistics to make money off of them. And then just discussions around, different college players. I think there was the pair, the receiver at LSU this past year, or maybe 2 years ago, who said that he had bet on himself in different games, things like that. It's kind of, and when you blur the lines between amateurism and professional sports, now that you have NIL and everything, it's become quite a topic. So during the sports betting conference in New Jersey this week, Adam Greenblatt, who's the CEO of BetMGM, was asked about, what happens as player props get banned in colleges. And now you have some leagues like the NBA taking a look at them as well. The argument he made was, if people want to bet on things, they're going to be able to bet on them, whether it's the black market, offshore sports books, or something of that nature, which is true for the professional leagues. I would say, as with college player props, it becomes a little more murky. Once these bans get passed in different states, like Wyoming is now considering one, Vermont just had one, Ohio as well, Maryland, North Carolina is now proposing one. Once these bans get passed, what's going to be done to enforce them? They're going to be enforced by legal sports books not being able to offer them, but are you going to be able to crack down on the offshore ones as well? Historically, what we've seen is that is not the case. The offshore market is kind of operated willy-nilly with little crackdowns and enforcement. So it would be unfortunate if that's the case here, but it seems like companies are gearing up for that and trying to make that argument in state houses as we approach, the upcoming, big seasons and everything. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch, but I'm sure the books would hate to lose them.
Yeah, they would. But again, a small percentage of the overall handle on some of these. And so if it does make sense, then maybe it ends up happening across the board. Sam, thanks for keeping us updated on that. Boy, I saw on my timeline yesterday a lot of the DFS companies saying we're here, we're back in different states where I thought they weren't legal. What's going on here, Sam? Are these DFS companies returning in the same way in these pick'em games that they were previously, or is this a new iteration of them?
Yeah, so they're not returning in the same way. You're 100% right. They're coming back with a different version. These are the peer-to-peer models versus the player versus house models, which have become so popular. Essentially, they look the same and should feel the same for most players, but the way they're different is how the payouts are structured. Instead of essentially putting money on the line, and if you win, you get money from the app. If you lose, the app keeps your money. You're now getting money that is a percentage from all of the fees that people enter into these contests, sort of similar to traditional fantasy sports. It's sort of a way to get around what a lot of states have done, with just saying, if you are a house and you're taking money from the player, we're going to view you as gambling. So they've said, oh, no, we're just going to take all these people's fees, which are essentially the same things as kind of a bet, pool them together, and whoever has the best entry at the end of the day ends up getting that money. Similar. So we've seen them re-enter states like Florida, re-enter states like Massachusetts, which previously had sent these, various companies cease and desist letters. What was pretty interesting this week is during that same conference in Jersey, some representatives from some of those companies spoke about this. They were asked, if you were so concerned with the definition of fantasy sports versus sports betting, why have you not tried to sue a lot of these states, especially the ones that haven't let you back in? What they said was, we're now focused on lobbying, getting new laws passed, because it seems like they've kind of figured out that the regulators are going to have their agenda, which they take from the legislature. It's now about actually convincing the legislature and the lawmakers to pass a law to codify that, so the regulators can then, take that and that way. It seems like we found out that most regulators aren't comfortable with kind of stretching these definitions and these gray areas. They're going to be more favorable to sports betting laws or sports books in general. Now these companies are saying we want to go have that influence with the lawmakers. That'll be a tough task. We'll see. Once you get sports betting passed, you don't really want to go in and open up things, especially if it's an election year. A lot of other things on the political agenda. So we'll see how much influence these apps have had, how long they can last with these peer-to-peer models versus the player versus house models. I imagine if there wasn't a big difference between them, they wouldn't be pushing to change them. So that's kind of the next development, is how deeply they can influence lawmakers and bring them on their side on this issue, because they'll really be the key here.
Yeah, I sort of feel like there'll be a gimmick or two from some of these companies to try and lure people in some way. I don't know what it is yet. I guess the best advertiser will end up winning that that competition. Okay, so WNBA, generally speaking, is not a sport that people tend to bet on like the others: the NBA, college basketball, college football, the NFL, baseball, hockey, etc. The numbers are showing, though, that a lot of people are gravitating to betting. As the WNBA draft, Sam, sports betting was up significantly. So let's dive into that. And I guess the bigger question is, as we know, can one player in the WNBA transform not just the league, but sports betting and the interest in it as well?
Craig, so far it seems like it. Obviously, when you think of women's sports today, when you think of women's basketball today, you think of Caitlin Clark. And that's kind of been the story this year with her going number one overall in the past, the WNBA draft that just happened. We saw the money that was bet on the draft was up over 322 times more than last year. That's not a percentage increase. That's, 322 times. That's just an enormous increase. I can't even wrap my head around it. And betting in general, the amount of bets that were placed was up 150 times as well. So you're getting casuals brought into this market with women's sports, and you're getting professional bettors really taking advantage of it as well. Obviously, it's been a tremendous year for women's sports, women's basketball, and it's really cool to see the momentum carrying over from college and the success she had into the WNBA now as these women become pros. She had a pretty good night last night, dropping 12, 8, and 6. You actually couldn't even bet on her to go number one overall. As you know, at most books, her odds, she was so likely to go number one overall, they didn't even offer odds on her, which is another unprecedented thing in women's sports and betting. But meanwhile, the books are offering more markets on the WNBA. DraftKings actually had almost 4 times more of the markets than they did last year on the draft. So we're seeing, as the popularity is coming with women's sports, the betting is going up and the books are embracing it as well. I think there was 3 million viewers on the WNBA draft, according to ESPN, which is also a huge increase from last year. So it's great to see sports betting mixing in with that. And the Fever are the most bet team to win the WNBA championship, even though they were one of the worst teams in the league last year. So obviously it's all revolving around Caitlin Clark right now. We'll see as her play continues into the season. If that continues, if the betting interest stays there, or if it goes up even more, that would be great to see.
Yeah, the pro level is the big test for Caitlin Clark, because, of course, WNBA, best basketball in the game ahead of college hoops, no doubt. All right, Sam, good luck to your Knicks this weekend. We'll catch up again next week. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Craig.